Croeso nôl, muy bon dias, and welcome back to another potentially riveting episode of the Finger Ymdrech Diaries. I seem to start every video by saying I'm not working in the garden this year, we do in the house. But here I am back in the garden. The garden is looking as ship-shape as it's ever looked. I don't like the paths, I'd rather see some mulch or some grass on them, but you know, this is what we've got. Most of the beds are ready for planting, some of them are blocked up with existing planting, but you know, it's generally we're good to go. I do have some concerns of the garden for this year, and let's go and find a seat and we'll see if we can address some of those concerns and problems. So in simple terms, can you explain to us what exactly permaculture is? Permaculture, where can I start? Far better if Google explains it than me, so here's what Google says about it.
Permaculture can be understood as the growth of agricultural ecosystems in a self-sufficient and sustainable way.
We already live an alternative lifestyle, you know, we don't have mains electric, we don't have mains fuel, well, we don't have mains anything, hence off-grid, and I've already made a video explaining that. Before coming to Spain, I jokingly said to people that I was going to grow dreadlocks and put beads in my beard and live a hippy-dippy style lifestyle that most people imagine that you are when you say that you're going to live an off-grid existence. I'm still working on the dreadlocks, and higher management vetoed my decision for me to have beads in my beard. So why don't you mulch your paths or let the grass grow? Realistically, my paths should be mulched. It would help contain the media or the dirt on my growing beds. It would help stop the edges of the bed drying out so quickly, but I really can't produce enough mulch to do it. Second to that, in an ideal world, I would just let the grass and the native plants grow on the paths. But I don't have a lawnmower to mow them. Some of my paths are too narrow, and realistically the plants that want to grow on my paths are mostly sort of viney type creepers that soon swamp the crops, or they have massive thorns that want to cut my ankles open. So I've had to resort to raking the paths. Something I'm working, if I can eradicate, that's a word you can't use in permaculture, if I can eradicate some of the thorny bits and pieces and the creepers and just promote grass and clovers, then I'd be much happier to see the paths green, but we're a long way off that. Like I said in one of my videos about no dig. No dig is a lovely idea, but you've got to dig initially, in my opinion. So explain to me, why don't you plant your seeds directly into the ground? We've tried direct planting: beetroot, peanuts, tiger nuts, carrots, and sweet corn. Last year I planted, well, all of those things, and I went for dinner, and I came back and it appeared like the earth was moving. All my seeds were being carried by the ants. Don't laugh. Well, it's funny now, but it wasn't funny at the time. So 2 packets of tiger nuts went, 2 packets of peanuts went, umpteen beetroot went. They just all disappeared. So we've pretty much given up planting directly into the ground. So how do you overcome this problem of planting seeds directly into the ground? To overcome this, we've had to plant in trays. You know, but carrots don't do well transplanted. Beetroot We tried a different way of doing beetroot this year, which I might video later. But generally speaking, we have to start everything in trays and then transplant. So it's easy then. You've solved this issue by planting seedlings. That hasn't really solved the problem, because we put seedlings in and ants don't bother. Once there's life in the plant, then the ants leave it alone. But there's plenty of other things that will eat them. You know, last year our plot was just alive with grasshoppers. Now they say that grasshoppers prefer grass than your plants, and if you plant them, and if you leave grass either side, then they'd rather eat the grass. Well, I wasn't able to mow what is now our orchard, or the bit of ground that we sit in last year, and it was, you know, chest height with grass. Grasshoppers are all in my plot. You know, you couldn't walk through, there's like a carpet of grasshoppers waking up in front of you. You know, honestly, it's more like a famine relief centre for insects than a vegetable plot. I watched the chap last week on YouTube, very plausible, thousands of followers, probably a professional. So with diverse planting, the insects come into your garden because they've smelt, you've got a broccoli, but then they smell the garlic, and then they smell an onion, then they smell a cabbage, and they get so confused that they just move on by. Well, I gotta be honest, that's not my experience. I sat there watching him and I was buying it, even though I know that it's nonsense. Maybe the insects in Australia are far better educated than mine. He also said that the insects will only eat the weak plants, you know. Like wolves will only take the weakest wildebeest. You know, it hasn't happened with us. We planted 40 cabbage last winter. We didn't have one. Last spring, all my seed trays were massacred. We've had to start seeds in trays now down by the house where there are fewer insects. You know, it's I have 2 beds of potatoes up there, which I'll show you in the video. That, well, you wouldn't know there's potatoes being planted in there, and they planted next to a bed of onions. Now half that bed of onions got eaten as well. So we had a bit of a crossroads in truth. You know, last year I had loads and loads of melons, and you pick them up and they were all hollow. The beetles had been in them all. So it's we're at a crossroads, like I just said. Either we do what we're doing now, and if we want one of something, we have to plant 40. You know, that didn't work with the cabbage. You know, as I said, we've basically given up on growing anything that needs direct sowing, and any brassicas we can forget. Lettuce, you can forget. You know, I've either got to start using pesticide or just not plant them. It really is as simple as that. You know, the main ethos thinking of permaculture is that you try and go back to nature, that you plant a diversity of things, and which will promote a diversity of insects, and you know, you'll get predators, and a natural cycle will evolve. And as I said, before coming to Spain, I bought it. We're heading into our 3rd season of planting, and in honesty, I'm punch drunk. Okay, I know you're supposed to, perhaps the interplanting isn't quite as diverse as it should be with me, And that's partly from all my failures. But you know what? If I'm growing a bed of, well, I have a bed of broad beans, much delayed, that probably won't come to much, but I'm growing them mainly to keep ground cover and to fix some nutrients or nitrates back into the soil. But they are planted left that far away from a bed of garlic, and the first sowing of broad beans was massacred. You know, planting a new plant in my plot is akin to leaving a newborn lamb in the middle of the Serengeti tied to a tree. The chance of it making it by the morning is slim to non-existent. So I don't know. When you live as close to nature as we do, let's be honest, when you rely on your electricity from the sun, you know, we have to pick and choose the days that we can do laundry and that type of thing. We have to be far more in tune with what's going on in our surroundings. I see the impact of using pesticides and fertilizer and digging where it shouldn't be dug. But I don't know, it's soul destroying. Soul destroying. Again, my orchard. The true permaculturist will be horrified at how I've planted my trees. You're supposed to dig it in swales and leave them mixed, and but you know, it's we don't get enough rain for the swales to hold the water. If I don't mow, then the grass is chin height. It harbours snakes, it harbours insects, which is supposed to be good, but ticks on the dogs aren't good. So I've had to plant them in rows so that I can at least, hopefully when I encourage some plant growth, I can at least mow to the tractor. Another problem with diversified crops or trees, you know, I've got almond trees planted in with pears, for instance, both of which have totally very different water requirements. You know, so diversity comes with problems. You know, I got pomegranates, don't need much drinking. Almonds, maybe 3 times a year they won't water it. Walnuts need 20 litres of water a week. You know, so I diversified. So a diversification of plants in the same space in itself causes problems. Anyway, I think I've waffled on enough for one day. So thank you for taking time out of your busy day to sit here and try and explain to us exactly what is the problems you face. So this bed was planted with potatoes. Insects put pay to every plant. There's not one potato left. The edges are planted with onions, which are surviving, even if they're not thriving. This bed was also planted with potatoes. You can see they're pretty miserable. I doubt I'll have a feed from this bed. Next to these 2 rows of potatoes, there's a row of onions. Now the onions aren't doing too bad. Well, some of them aren't. From here, look, you can see where the insects have done their bit. There's a bald patch there. And then we get down to here, and basically the last 3 meters, 2.5 meters is devoid of any onions. Everyone got eaten. This bed here, there's nothing in it. that's ready to go. It's been aerated, it's been mulched, it's been watered. This one the same, ready to go. This one is my main crop potatoes, and the end of it is fully planted with onions, and I have 2 further beds of main crop potatoes. Technically should be onions or something in there to deter the pests, but you know, I think I've got enough onions for the time being, that's the trouble. Onions in here, we'll see. Jury's out whether they're going to do anything. It's a bed of garlic I planted Christmas week. And this bed next to it is half garlic, and now we're going into onions. Again, this bed is empty, ready to go. This is a bed of broad beans. There's a second planting of broad beans because the insects had every one of the first ones. The second ones haven't done too well. They're starting to fruit. Part of the reasons they haven't done so well is because my mulch was a bit coarse, and it's actually sent the stems of the broad beans sideways to avoid the mulch, so they're sitting down. But I mainly plant them to improve the ground and to keep something in the ground, not necessarily to eat, because we don't really like them, although we are eating quite a bit of falafel these days. Next to this, I've got an extensive bed of garlic. If you've got sharp eyes, you might see an onion or 2 in there. In fact, one of the onions is going to seed. Anyway, the garlic don't look anywhere near ready as far as bulb development is concerned, but the leaves are starting to brown, so I don't know. The same thing happened to me last year, and apparently they were overcrowded last year, so we've increased the spacing this year, but still, you know, we'll see. If you count the 2 failed potato beds, I've only got 5 full-size empty beds. Effectively, I've done what I've said I was in danger of doing. Is I got plants that are, as the NHS is fond of saying, bed blocking. So my garlic is nowhere near developed, ready enough to come out. My potatoes are going to be a while yet. These 2 beds are the same. These 2 beds are the same. They are a long way off coming. I've got some 3 little beds here with bits of the cabbage that the insects didn't like left in that one. Nothing left in this one. And this one, well, I got one surviving artichoke. Might have to have that for tea because that looks well past being ready. I'm going to find myself with more plants than room. Finally we got some rain, so we've been forced indoors. I got no excuse not to tidy my garage now. Thanks for watching this far. I've long wanted to clone myself, so somebody to give me a hand. He's not quite as good looking as me, he's a bit more cheeky, but you know, he's handy to have about the place. Oi, I heard that. Hopefully I didn't offend anybody with my stereotypical comments about dreadlocks and the like. Obviously I'm just jealous. I'm the one doing all the work, but you doing all the talking. And again, none of my videos are meant as instructional, they're just Vlog is a proper word, diary of our lives. So please don't take anything as that I'm saying as gospel. I'm just trying to share what we are going through here, trying to carve out a new life. Maybe you'll come back and see what I decided to do regarding pesticides and what crops we're going to plant. If so, I'll see you again. If you've enjoyed any of this, well, maybe you'll give me one of these and maybe make a comment. I'm sure that some of what I've said is going to be quite controversial to some people, but there we go, I've said it now and I can't unsay it. Goodbye from me, it's goodbye from him, goodbye.